Okay, now that we have our skeleton created, let's go ahead and take a look at how we can get everything bound to the skeleton and weight it up. So we're just going to take all the different pieces that we have. So I took all the geo that I want to weight up, and I put it into this folder, and I just called it geo. So I'm just going to select everything like this. Let me get rid of that. Let me go this way with it real quick and hold down Control and select that last piece. So these are all the pieces that I want to bind up to the skeleton. Then I'm going to select the root joint of the skeleton. So you can see this here, like that. And I'm going to go ahead and go to the rigging area right here. And I'm going to go to skin. And I'm going to go to bind skin. Let's open up the options for that so we can take a look at this. So the options that I'm going to keep on here is the max influence 4. And that means any vertex on the model can only be influenced by 4 different bones at one time. And I think that's a pretty standard thing for today's game engines and things like that. That should give you the control that you're looking for painting your weights. Also, this normalize weights is set to interactive. I'm going to bind this to the joint hierarchy, and this bind method is closest distance. So there's a lot of different methods for how you could actually bind this to the skeleton. This is the one that I'm the most familiar with. So I'm going to try this closest distance thing right here. And hit apply. And you can see it's going to go through and it should select. Actually, I think I got rid of my selection of my pieces, and then I hold down Control and add the skeleton. Okay, hit apply. Should go through and add skinning to all the different pieces. So you can see that it's going to make a bind pose for you, and that's if you ever get this thing and you rotate some part of it and you want to get back to the initial bind pose of whenever this thing was bound to the skeleton. You can just go to skin, you select one of the joints and go to skin, and then go to bind pose right here like that, and it should put it back into the original position. Now if you have a rig on your model or something like that, maybe even if you have keys set on the different bones, that might become an issue just going straight back to the bind pose. But for the most part, that should work through this whole section that you see here. So now that everything's bound, you might just want to take a look through the different pieces and then check that they have weighting on them. So you'll see Maya actually locks these parts in the channel box and turns them gray. And then everything's controlled through the skeleton at that point. So let's take a look at real quick how we can start weighting this stuff up. And if you want to do something where you know 100% weighting to a bone is going to happen, I'm going to show you right here like this. You can hit F9 and you can select your verts that you want to bind to a particular joint. You know, just tap 4 to make sure I didn't get any of the other side here. So tap 5 to get that back. And then I'm going to go to skin, and then we're going to go to the paint skin weights. I'll do the option box for that to open up the options for this thing. Now you might see your cursor for your brush to start painting weights. If that thing's really large, we can change the brush size within the controls over here, or you can hold down B and then click and drag left and right to get it to the right size. So sometimes when you first start off, the manipulator for that's like really huge. So something else that we can do, if we find the exact joint that we want to bind to or paint the weights to, you can actually right click over that and say set influence, as long as you have that joint in view. So sometimes you have to kind of move around a little bit to get that one selected. So you see how that's selected here, and then you can see within this hierarchy here, there's different ways that you can look. You can look alphabetical or by hierarchy, and I think that's the one I usually keep things in here, the hierarchy, so I can have an exact layout of all the different bones like what we see over here in the outliner. So when we're ready for that, you can just come down here to the flood area and you can flood that part with 100% influence on things. So let's just go ahead and come over here for this part. And if you know how to grow selection, you can actually select some verts over here on this one. Hit Shift, and then it's the open arrow key that's right next to the question mark key on the keyboard. So you can click that and grow the selection out like that. And then we'll go back to the paint skin weights tool, and then we'll right click over this one and try to get this bone and set the influence for that. It's just there's a lot of bones right now around there, so that's why it's getting a little confused. So we've got that filled. Let's just go ahead and we'll fill this guy here. We know that we want this thing 100% weighted to a joint, so I'm just going to grow the selection. Again, shift and that open arrow key. And then we'll do the paint weights. And I can come here and just right click over this and say set influence, and I'll flood that. Let's do this one here for this piece like this, and I'll grow that out like this. Go back to the paint weights, and I want to use this part on here like that. I'll go ahead and flood. And let's go over here to this one. I'll grow the selection on this. And we'll go to this joint here and set influence. And I'll flood that one. So I'm going to do the same process to the saddlebags on the side and to this piece here, the backpack, the full backpack. And I'm also going to do that to the staff. So I'm going to pause it and get those done real quick. Okay, these pieces are now bound and weighted up. One thing we can do to test things out, I've got a initial position for some of these joints. Let's say the staff here, and you can see we've got our time slider, and right now it's set to show us a slider range from 1 to 24 frames. Maybe we can go ahead and change this to just to say 300, something like that. I think that'll give us a nice number to start working with. And at the frame 1, maybe we just key exactly where everything's at right now. So I'll just click this, hold down shift, and then click down here to select all these. And then right click over the name, rotate Z, and then we can say key selected. So that's going to set a keyframe for the translation and rotation of this. And then maybe we can set at frame 10, we'll go ahead and move this to some other location. If we've weighted it up correctly, you can see that everything should move for us, and then we can go ahead and right click on here and say key selected. So that's going to allow us to take this time slider and just check out and make sure that the motion on this thing is working. Now we could do something very similar for the eyes. Remember, we got the eyes weighted up and we can test those out. So let's just go ahead and right click over this again and say key selected, and then maybe go to frame 10, and if you want to rotate them, maybe we rotate them this way, which we've got kind of an interesting issue where we mirrored the behavior over for this. So if we want to rotate these eyes and have them look somewhat natural, kind of going around like that, maybe we'll get the number for this. So we'll do -45 like this, and then this one needs to be rotated 45 like that. And then now we can select both these joints like that, and I'll select this here and then right click and say key selected. So now we've got the eyes moving, and we can at least test that part out. Something else that we could do real quick just to make sure we're getting things moving along here is something like the jaw. Maybe at the frame 10, maybe we key those, and then at frame 20, maybe we open the jaw. And basically what we're doing is setting up an animation for ourselves so we can start to see how the weighting is affecting the model. So this looks horrible, obviously, but we're going to go ahead and we'll fix that stuff. So I'll key selected on that. So now we've got some little animation going for these different pieces like this. But we tested out the eyes, we tested out this thing here. Let's test this part, and let's move that thing around, and we've weighted that up right in here like that. We weighted this part right here like that. I weighted up also the backpack, so that's all weighted and through there. So it looks like everything's pretty good. This is moving along as we expect. I did notice that these joints were not actually in the right location that I wanted. I'm not sure how they moved, but they ended up moving. Now there is a way that we could take these and actually move these joints even though that it's skinned. There's a tool inside of here, and if we go to skin, And then there is a move skinned weights, and it's right here. Let's move skin joints. This will allow us to take these different joints that we have, and we can actually just move them back. Let's go ahead and move this back here. I'm just having trouble grabbing that manipulator like this. Maybe if you can't see it in shaded mode, which is a little weird, so I'll just go to the side view and I can kind of maybe tell a little bit better where these things should sit. So let me get that right about there. And then I want to take these end points, these end joints, and let's get those moved up as well, right to about there. Okay, and so just to go out of the tool, and then now those joints are set in that location, and then now we should be able to take these and rotate them, and everything kind of works as we would expect. So if you run into that situation, that might become a powerful tool for you. So just a real quick side note about using this tool where we're going to temporarily disable the skinning and move joints on this. If you go and do your skin and go to bind pose, it was causing major problems and causing these joints to shift in a really weird way. So I found out what the problem of that is. The bind pose of your different meshes, if you take a look at them, if you actually find the bind pose for the skeleton, so if we select the skeleton, you can see this bind pose that we have here. That needs to be updated, and somebody made a really nice script to go ahead and do that. So if we go to Pinterest, I've got a board that's made for different tools and resources, and I added a link to this on here, and you can see it's got this image right here like this. Just go ahead and click on it, and you can see it's actually found on dgx.com.au. So if I click this, you can see there's a nice write-up on this little script that this person made on how to fix the bind pose. So you just select any joints that you moved using that tool, and then you run this script. So if you go and download the script, you can actually put that in a particular area, and I was going to show you where you want to actually put that stuff. So let's see, if I go to my user settings, and I just go to the C drive. So let's go to the C drive and go to users, and this would be you on here. Then you want to go to your documents. There's a Maya area. If we go in there, you can throw the script right in this area like that, and that's where the script will sit. If you double click on it, or you get it to where you can copy the name of this. So in order for you to refresh that script inside of Maya and not go out of Maya and get rid of it, you can do let's see, a refresh like this, and do the semicolon, select it, and just hit Control Enter, and that will reload whatever scripts are in that particular area. So then you would need to take the joints that you moved, and you would select them. I'll hit Q so I can keep selecting and holding down Shift and adding to that selection. So there's the joints that I had, and then I would have to run that script. That's the name of this thing for updating the bind pose. And then at that point, you should be able to be back into the mode where you can select any joint, and you can go to skin and then go to bind pose, and you'll be just fine for whatever's going on with that. But if you don't, that could cause some major issues. So just be on the lookout for that. Let's take the time slider and let's go back to this frame 20, and let's take a look at the mouth here. So here's typically what I kind of do for this. I maybe get the jaw kind of working in this area, and then I might take all the verts in the head in here like this. I'll just hit F9, and we'll do something very similar to what we did before, where we're going to take these points, and then we're going to paint the skin weights. We'll find the head joint right up here and say select influence. So check and make sure that says head. Let's just go ahead and flood those pieces to that right there like that. The other thing we can do is, if we have UV information for this, sometimes it's actually easier to pick out some of the stuff in the UVs So let me grab the UV window and pull this over, and let's just see if it's going to be any easier for us to select the bottom of the mouth in that area. And maybe I can take my verts, I'll do F9 and maybe select along through there and grow my selection out, shift, and then remember that arrow key next to the question mark key on the keyboard, and we'll grow this out kind of like this. And I want to grab all these verts down here. I don't necessarily want these verts down here, so I'll hold down control and deselect them, and then I can look at everything and make sure I'm not selecting anything else. This is the inside of the mouth that I made, so I can actually select some of these pieces in through here. Might as well select these verts and maybe zoom in a little bit tighter on this, like this within here, like that. I'm just going to grab all those, and then I think we should be pretty good for that. And then now I'll flood that with the jaw. So I can right click on here, so I select influence and say flood, and it should flood that part of the mouth open for us. Now it looks like I missed a few verts in through here, so I'll just select those verts right here. Hold down control and shift, and I'm adding to that selection. If I tap F, I can kind of frame in around that a little bit better. And it looks like I need to grab this one here, and because I'm grabbing in a difficult area, I need to definitely check and make sure I didn't select through the model. If I put on my move icon, usually you can tell a cluster of things. If you select a vert on the back of there, that thing actually, that pivot moves in the center there. So I think we're pretty good for that. And so I'll go here and I'll say flood again. And I want to just make sure I'm on that the jaw right there, and then I'm still missing some points. So this is, I know this is tedious right here, but once this is done, it's kind of over with, and I know it's a little bit of a pain right now, but just work your way through that. Hit flood like that. And I think we're getting pretty close. So now I could start just painting some of the weights. It does look like I grabbed this vert, and that should be selected on the head. So let's do this one last thing, and I'm going to make sure it's on this one. Right click, say select influence, and then flood, and then now I can start painting this stuff. So I'll go in object mode and go back to the paint skin weights tool. If you hold down shift, you can actually smooth out your results, which is pretty nice. And I'm mainly going to concentrate on one side of the model. Now when you have a mouth closed and you do this operation that I'm about to show you, where we can mirror the skin weighting across, sometimes it has problems right down the center, but we're going to use that tool and kind of fix this up the best that we can. So I'm just holding down shift and I'm kind of smoothing that out. So you can see how it's lessening the influences that are down here that we put 100% to the jaw, and with that smoothing action, it just kind of makes a nice fall off for that. So while this is selected, I might as well just start painting and do some replace like this, and then I can paint this whole area in. Now this whole area, the top of the head, I might as well just go tap B and click and drag out to make this nice and big, and paint this like 100% weighted to the head joint, at least up in this this area right in through there. I'm going to hit undo accidentally. Grab something there. So you can see that we want to preserve the shape of the head, and really all the deformation should happen down here in the neck area. So I'll hold down shift and kind of smooth the results out a little bit down and through here, because what you're saying is if it's white, it's nice and hard. Kind of think about a skeleton, and the skull is nice and hard in through here, and then this area with the fall off and the gradient, when you hold down shift, becomes more fleshy in that area. So maybe if you think of it that way, it might help you kind of with this this weighting task that you have. So you can see this here, and then now what we can do is start to kind of play around with some of these influences that we have here. So we remember we made these joints and we made them for, like, this was this part of the lip, right? We kind of drag out this way. I'm going to right click on this one, select the influence, paint this up a little bit right through here, and keep going. So usually to start off, I try to make it to where it's pretty obvious for those influences for what you do, and then maybe smooth the results out a little bit. Again, because of the binding method that we did, each one of these verts is only going to be able to be controlled by 4 joints. We had a 4-joint limit. So say this vert, maybe it's influenced by this one here, this, maybe a little bit of this, and this, and that should give you enough for that. You just won't be able to have any influence from some of these other bones around here, which usually works out pretty good. So I'm just going to paint a little bit in through here for that. Like that. I'll do a little bit of influence on here. Like this. Same for this one here. And so then let's start taking a look at the cheek. Maybe we want an area about that much, and I'll hold down shift and I'm smoothing that out. Again, I do want a lot of influence on this this corner piece. Right through there. I want that to be able to pull that skin up quite a bit. Through there. So I'm just doing this very rough. We're obviously going to have to move these bones around a bit to get a better understanding of what is really going on with this stuff. So here's the tongue that I made, and through here. So again, if I put this back on replace, and maybe I can get some of this all painted up and through here. At least just to get the tongue started, I can get it all just kind of following that part and smooth it out. And then maybe fix it up a little bit better at the end. And then maybe start painting some of these influences here. Right there like that. Get something here. Here. Like this. And smooth that out a little bit. And then start painting these guys down here. Smooth that out a little bit. Okay, and I think that's pretty good for the head. So I'll put this back to frame 1 where we had the initial bind of this thing. Select the mesh that I want to mirror the weights over on, and then I'll go to skin and then do mirror skin weights. And then remember that plane, that virtual plane that we were talking about earlier? We've got this manipulator down here that helps us. So this is Y and Z. So if you think about that being a virtual plane going down the center, that's what we want to mirror across from. We're painting on this side. This is the positive X side. See how the little indicator goes in this direction? That tells you it's positive. That's positive Y, positive Z, positive X. So you want to push from positive to negative right here. See this direction? So I'll select that and hit apply. And then now if we take the jaw and we rotate this thing open, we should get most of this works pretty good. The mouth does have some problem areas, and so like I was saying, you might get this one stray vert that you have to kind of clean up, but you can at least see now that we do have the same influences on the left side and the right side. So usually this is what kind of goes on. You might have this one little point that you got to come in and clean up or something like that, but I usually use that leave that for like the very last stage. I just want to kind of test some of this stuff and see if it's starting to work pretty good. So you could build up something that's more like a pose that you want. So if this was supposed to be some kind of smile or something to that effect, you can see that these become, now they're kind of like clusters of areas of influence that you can start messing around with. And I can take this and push it up and pull it out, something like that. So I know this is kind of how I want the expression to be, somewhat like this. And then now that we've got that set, we can start actually painting on this thing here and start messing around with the influence a bit more. You really got to kind of build it's almost like building animation poses for yourself to really see what the weighting is really doing, because you really need to stress the mesh and really kind of put it in areas where it's actually going to go whenever somebody like an animator or somebody's going to come and take this stuff and start moving it around. So a lot of it's going to be a lot of this. You're just going to have to do this really push and pull with these influences that you have, like that. And sometimes I accidentally hit different keys or whatever, so just keep hitting undo until you get back to the weighting if that happens to you. I know I keep hitting that all the time. Sometimes it switches over to the smooth because I'm holding down the shift, and I think that usually happens whenever I hit undo on accident or something. So if that happens to you, you can kind of work your way through it. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. And keep working through here. And you do have to be careful. You can see how the mesh starts going kind of crazy sometimes. It's just a lot of back and forth that you're going to have to do for this. So if I want this part of the mouth to be more rigid, I can do that. But then maybe I'm setting the influence for this. Maybe need more influence on here. And you want it to be fairly, fairly natural as you're moving this stuff around. You want these things to actually work together. And so sometimes a little bit of influence really changes the position of this part here. So you can see how that's really moving quite a bit. So I got to be a little bit more careful about how I introduce the weights into that area. Like this. And I do think, let's see, if we turn off everything, we'll do show none and then just show polygons. You can kind of start to see a little bit more what's going on with the mesh itself and what's going on with these influences. And so this is pretty darn rough in there, obviously. So I'll do show all. And then let's take a look at the mesh here, and if I start to put influence on just that joint, I need it on both pieces, on the top or the inside and the outside of the model, to get it to start to behave the way that I want it to. Otherwise it kind of tears it up pretty bad. So let all the stretching happen in this area. But again, this is one of those cases where these joints are parented to the head up here. All these are parented to the jaw. So when it opens the jaw, if you think about your cheek And all this flesh that's over here, it doesn't just open up like what's going on here where it's this really weird shape. There's this natural pulling that happens. So I know I'm fixing some of this with the weights like this, which is fine. But I probably need to make sure that this is like half the distance from here to like here or so. And once that's set up, what I need to start paying attention to at that point is we can't really do anything more weighting wise, but what we can do is animation or joint placement wise is moving this thing a little bit this way, and even rotating can potentially help right through there. So you're really using these joints to build the shape instead of if you've ever built like blend shapes or morph targets or something like that. It's kind of weird. You're actually building shapes with these joints, and it is a bit more difficult, but this is what most game engines are going to be expecting from you, to have this in through here. So I definitely chose a very difficult area. This is probably one of the more difficult places to paint the weights for, is if you're going to do some kind of setup for the mouth opening and closing and doing some kind of expressions and things like that. Now, some other things that might have helped is you can see this area is pretty flat geometry wise, so if I as a modeler would take note of that and then maybe make the flesh in through there a bit thicker, that could potentially help too. So this really is a combination of the weights that you're painting, what you've got set up for these joints, and how you're kind of using them, and how you're kind of animating. So all the things kind of play in together. Okay, let's look at some strategies for some of the other areas. So usually the way that I like to work, if we take a look at something like the legs or the arms, let's go ahead and select our mesh. Let's go to the Paint Skin Weights tool. So we'll go to Skin, Paint Skin Weights, and go to the option box for that. And again, we are going to just right-click over the joint and select the influence, or set the influence. And then we're going to kind of paint out that area as solid as you possibly can. So if you just work your way around this, the shoulder area is going to be pretty tricky, but everything else should be a bit more straightforward at that point. So if you see this joint here, if I right click and say set influence and just paint that pretty solid, going all the way across there, and then just smooth some of that, that should give us a pretty good starting point right through there. And then on the elbow area, you're definitely going to want to hold this and make sure it feels rather hard on the outer part for where the elbow goes. So give that enough weight in through there. Set influence here. Smooth this out. And if we just go through and do this at least all the way down to the wrist, if I do this one, I'm probably going to want to get all this area in through here, like that. So let's take a look at this and move it. So again, we're going to take this here, and if I want to select all the joints in the hierarchy going down for this, you can go to select and go to hierarchy. And you can see if I keep using that over and over, the way that you can get that button to show up here is you can go to select and go to find the thing that you want, hold down Control and Shift and click on it, and it'll add that icon up here on your shelf. I put it on the rigging one because that's something you might use quite a bit. So if I select that hierarchy like that, you can see if I open this thing up, you can see it's selected everything below from the shoulder. So now we can key this. I'm going to select it, right click, key selected, go to frame, let's go to 20, and let's go ahead and I'm going to move these joints individually and build a pose that's something kind of like going like this. Remember, I'm going to twist along here. Then maybe we'll take the arm and bend it up a bit and do something like this with things, and then maybe get the wrist to come out like that, something like that. Okay, so that's a pretty extreme pose for the arm. We can do something like that, and I think we got quite a bit. So we'll do the select hierarchy. You can see it's going to select all that, and then let's key it on frame 20. And now we got a slider to slide, and we can start working on these weights that we see here. So I'll go to frame 20 and look at the extreme pose for this, and let's go to the paint weights so we can start painting on here. Now this is going to be a combination of, we've got some weighting that you might throw in the clavicle, but really a lot of weight in this area is probably going to go in this bone right in through here. You can see how it's going to start pulling the mesh back, and that's what we want for sure. Something else is, we've got these different parts and pieces. We can copy the weighting from this part of the body after we get the body done, so I would be more concerned about what's going on with the body. So this is something you can kind of tell if you later on had a game res mesh and it was not all one piece where all the verts are welded together. You would have to be dealing with a lot. See these parts, you would have to be dealing with that on a part basis, but then trying to get everything to match up deformation wise, and that's really difficult. So that's usually why you, at the end, whenever you make a game res mesh, you probably are going to make it all a one piece model. So you can see with this twist that's going on here, if I add a little bit more influence in here, which I want, but I still want the feeling that there's a bicep there, so I don't want to just do this. That kind of really makes the whole arm turn into just a big tube, and that's not what we're going for. So I just got to be a little bit careful about how I'm weighting these things up. Now if I take this one, you can see that we're trying to distribute that twist on there. And if this becomes difficult, I can take the opacity and drag that down, and then that way it's not adding so much value on there. So I can finesse this stuff a little bit more. But it doesn't really help out with whenever I'm smoothing. I really want a strong smooth. So it's a little bit of give and take between these two. So you can see as that joint rolled around, and we start painting weights to that, that kind of rolls this back a little bit. So you need some of the influence from this on here and some here, so they really are sharing some of the work for this. You see that, and it's twisting the shoulder back, which is good as what I want. So really this, you really kind of have to do this job quite a bit to get really good at painting the skin weights. It just takes time to kind of figure out how these joints interact with each other and how much influence you need from each one to get the results that you're kind of going for. So I'll pump that back up with the opacity like this. Okay, and I'll select this one. You can see that's really twisting back this way quite a bit, so maybe I need more influence on this one here. See how it's twisting it this way? This one. So again, if we didn't have these joints in here that we added, it would be pretty difficult to get the arm in this position and not have the mesh be completely torn up. The other thing is, as you twist these joints and things like that, the mesh loses volume. It kind of shrinks down a little bit. So that's another problem with working with bones. But it's just, that's our system that we have currently. We're starting to be able to use more targets and things like that, but it's always going to be more expensive. So anything you can do with the joints themselves is going to be good. So I think that's starting to look better. And that's really twisting it up that way. So let's see. I'm going to pull this back down just a little. Right through there. And then smooth it out. And it's getting closer to the shape that I'm hoping for. I might have to put a little bit more weight on the shoulder to pull that down, which I do. Okay, so you can see that's starting to look pretty good. So let's take a look at the process of being able to copy skin weights from one mesh to the other. So we finished up the arm and that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and select the body mesh and then select these arm meshes, and then we'll go to skin, and then we'll do copy skin weights. We could look at the option box for this, but I'm just going to leave it at the default for this. So let's go ahead and go skin, copy skin weights like this, and let's go ahead and copy the weights also to these straps here. So go to skin, copy skin weights, and let's take a look at what the results are that this is giving us. So this is moving a bit better. I think this was really kind of flaring out. So I think that's holding a little bit better and through there. And if we take the arm, actually we've got the animation on here, so let's just scrub through the animation and twist that, and you can see what's happening to that piece. It's trying to do its best that it can to just follow the arm and follow the shape of the arm. If you remember before, it was kind of cutting into it pretty badly and not really following the shape. So that's going to give you a really good starting point if you just copy the weights from that one piece to another. So we're going to have to continue this process going all the way down the fingers and the feet and everything else like that. So I'm not going to do the entire body. You're going to have to take yourself through that. But I think these should give you enough techniques to kind of work with to get the job finished up. And then I'll finish up weighting this and then come back and then take a look at everything when we're done, and you can see some of the different results for this thing. Okay, after all the weighting is done, you can see here is the final results of a pose that I built, and I just put that at frame 20 for the pose, and actually just set up and turned on the ground as well, just so I could take a look and make sure that the feet were interacting with the ground correctly. So this is the point where we've got all these individual pieces. They've all been weighted up correctly. It was a lot of work to get everything to this point, so just make sure you're giving yourself enough time. It does take a lot of finessing to get the mesh to deform correctly and get these parts to interact with what is going on with the skeleton. So if I go back here and I just hit the skeleton by going to show and go to joints like this, you can kind of see what's going on here and how I took the staff and just positioned it to be able to be in the hand. Did a lot of work on getting the fingers to be able to curl up correctly. And it's still not perfect in through here, So one of the things is, after we get this thing pushed inside a ZBrush, if you want to take this pose and tweak on it and fix it up inside a ZBrush before you do any of the final pushing over to the high-res pieces, you're able to do that, but this at least gives us a nice starting point. So this is the, like I was saying, with the skeleton, and then going through and refining with all the weights and everything else like that. This is the final results for this. And this video is starting to run long. The last part of this is to basically get that mesh that we brought in at the very beginning. So if I show this mesh, and I push this off to the side, let me just tab 5 for that right there. The end goal is going to be us taking all the information from this one that's got all the different pieces, and we need to get this motion or the this pose, and we need it to actually drive this thing here. We're going to be doing that with a wrap deformer, and so I'm going to take you through the setup of how we can take the basically all these different pieces and then make it drive this mesh here. And then when we're done, we'll have this exact pose, but it'll all be on this model, and then we'll be able to export that out as an OBJ, and then we can pull that into ZBrush, and then we'll go ahead and transfer all that motion onto our individual pieces.